you look at the style we do now in Afreximbank, we're very diverse. But we need to be very smart when we use our power so that we leverage multiple times. So what we do typically in the bank is that we go into projects, we typically go debt, we debt in different ways, taking risk or giving guarantees. But with us going into the project, having the status we are and financing a member country of ours, bringing a lot of trust to this project. If you see, we typically leverage 4, 5, 6 times. So the whole idea how to use this 5 billion and act as if it's a 20 billion by going into projects selectively and then bring our friends and partners in. We do a lot of our projects where we underwrite and sell down. We have a very strong syndication desk that we need to transfer this experience on there to syndicate their own business. We do a lot of guarantees, we do a lot of reserve-based lending. We have a lot of countries that can use reserve-based lending to secure their future. They have a lot of assets under the ground that is not in the country balance sheet. So if you look at our country's balance sheet, it doesn't contain the treasures they have on the underground. And it's easy to start to convert this. Guarantees, we're also using a lot of repack to our risk. So we're not restricting ourselves. We are actually open to all this variety of products, because the size of the bank will allow this, because there is no $5 billion balance sheet in the continent that is focused on oil. So even if I compare to the large banks in the continent with very few, but of this size, their balance sheet is diverse. This is 5 based on oil, so this will be good enough to raise and distribute. And why using raise and distribute is I'm opening market for all banks to do more business, so that this is not a tight market, it's a big market that we just need to open up.
I don't think at this stage we want to go into the details of how some of these things are going to go. At the end of the day, our job is to establish the bank. It will have its board, it will have its management. So there is a limit to how much we can say that we're going to do on these things. Thank you.
We truly believe the future of this continent is about us trading together. If you look at us, we're doing 15% among each other, trading with each other, and 85% with the rest of the world. If you look at Europe, they do 60 to 70% among each other, and 30% to the rest of the world. So this means there's a lot of business that we can give to other fellow Africans that we're not giving, and it's slipping out. And AFCFTA is one way to support this for us. So we do a lot of adjustment. We do our adjustment funds so that countries that are at disadvantage of AFCFTA. We did a lot of cross-border guarantees for trucks to go cross-border. But there's a lot of work I think need to be done specifically on oil, on the free trade agreement. But we've already done a lot of this. So we sponsored our level, the management of the bank when they come. I think they will be interested to push more into facilitating how African countries trade together. As you were saying in his presentation, we're sending the oil out, we need to sell it in Africa, and free trade agreement is one of the ways that we need to look at. Typically, free trade agreement does not apply directly on oil, because oil has their own international prices and the way it's getting handled, but the infrastructure and the supplies can be treated accordingly. So if, for example, Nigeria is famous for their capacity to supply and services for oil. They have a lot of good small companies that service oil fields, and if this can be developed further to service other countries at a lower stage of development in this area, it will be a sort of us trading together. This kind of things, a lot of area of enhancement that we can do in getting Africans trading together.
In my opening remarks, I did say that APPO is now looking beyond oil producers to non-oil producers as well. The whole idea really is to ensure that we have an integrated energy market on the African continent. And to do that, you can't do that without creating the energy infrastructure, which will cut across the continent, from those producing as well as those who are not producing. And in this respect, the AFTA is a great partner in what we're doing. We are open to all funds, but we are not open to funds that will lead us away from our vision. We are very clear on that. That's why we have 3 classes. 60% goes to the Class A shareholders, 20% B, and 20% C. The idea is that, as you acknowledge, we may not have the kind of money that outsiders will have. If we open it the way some are suggesting, we risk losing our vision. People who are against what we believe we need to do, that is promote fossil fuel production, oil and gas, will come and tell us that they have the control of the bank and they are going to take us away from it. We are not going to allow that. We established African Energy Bank primarily for oil and gas, and then others.
If you look at Afreximbank shareholding, we follow the same. And it's healthy to have this portion in your capital, but it's healthy to keep it African-run, African-owned predominantly. So I'll talk about the private sector, why we need the private sector in the capital, and I'll talk about why we need international. The private sector typically in a capital, not only states, get the banks on their toes. So at the Afreximbank, we need to think commercial but act development. And we need to have the agenda of our member countries in the heart, but we execute it as if we're a very efficient commercial bank, because we have a private sector shareholders who expect us to act like an efficient, agile private sector bank while maintain our development identity in terms of supporting the countries. The international piece was really important for us. If you look at the Afreximbank, we have China, Afreximbank, we have the Standard Chartered. We have a lot of shareholders that are impactful globally, that buying their own shareholding in Afreximbank. One, because they want to see a bank supporting them as they're interested in Africa, but also, let's not forget that we're talking here equity. This is the way we're collecting the equity, but also having international equity will also good when you also go out and start to collect international funds. Of course, a bank like this, with this size, we need to attract international funds, whether from the West or from the East, whether it's Samurai, or it's Panda, or it's with normal bond, Euro bonds. But again, I really count on African states to understand the game. And Nigeria was so smart to put this money because they will leverage multiple back. Because when you put equity in your bank, you get this leveraged back to you multiple times. And I see no-brainer for all countries to come in, because whatever they will put, they get it back multiple times. And not only does how countries can start to put more of their reserves, more of their funding in their bank, because the more you fund your bank as liquidity, the more you put equity in the bank, the multiple it comes back to you at your conditions. You don't need to go to someone who will lend you from outside and keep telling you, you do this, don't do that, while you can have your own bank taking care of it. It's no-brainer, and I think as we launch, more and more countries will catch up to the concept and join the bank. A lot of the decisions will be left to the board and the CEO of the bank, but there's nothing to prevent us from working on the abandonment fund, everything. This is the largest oil player, so I don't think they will leave any stone unturned. So this should be part of them, but I'll leave it to them when they start and have their proper governance to do. And on the projects, of course, we'll be part of this big projects. But I don't know if SG want to comment, please. Okay. So when you're part on the projects piece, of course, we will be there. It will be a segue. It will be a distribution center to take part of projects and redistribute it. And it's also a good arm. Let me put it this way. We're competing with markets like China and India. They have the same population, 1.3 billion. But in those two markets, they have one thinking head. We have 50 plus thinking head in Africa. We're 1.3 billion also. So it's very important for organs like this to come up to help the countries think as one head together in terms of who's taking care of the pipes, who's taking care of the crude, who's refining, who's playing what part of the game. We cannot all play defense and offense and expect to win in football. So I think this bank will also help to set the tone of how to coordinate the game, like what APPO does at their governance and level and ministerial committees. But now they will set the game with money, which is also very important, to make sure that we are coordinating and we're not playing as 50 different heads, but one head competing with the other 1.3 billion, because we're also 1.3 billion that competing with them, but they have advantage of one game plan, which we need to find a way to figure it out how to do it while we maintain our sovereignty. Okay, I'll give you an example of what we do. We think we're the largest, or one of the largest financier of oil in Afreximbank. yet again, the management of the bank will start to do the right mix. So typically what you do is that we have a huge mandate, and you cannot depend on only one sort of funding. So on one hand, we're just working now on the final launch of our concessional finance window to give better rate, to give concessional funds, because you need it to make sure that you have the right development role in the continent. We're looking at blended finance by matching funds. We find global funds that are cheap, but coming for a specific purpose, and work our way to provide the guarantees and the wrappings to attract those funds to Africa, to ensure that we have long-term or cheaper funds. But still, Africa has more needs. And in this needs, if you see our balance sheet and how we raise funds, you go and raise in the international market, or you borrow bilaterally to lend in Africa. So it's a mixed bag. It's not a only development fund, and it's not only concessional window. It's a mixed bag depending on the type of project, because the size that we need to cover is humongous, and you cannot say, if you focus only on concessional funds and only subsidized rates, we will become like other banks that you see. Their model is that they have a large balance sheet, but the real lending is very limited, and the real impact will be limited. So this is what typically we think of when we look at how we fund ourselves, Afreximbank, and we're very successful in this, and we're very liquid. And I think this is what a smart oil bank would do. Again, their board and CEO decide how they want to do the mix, but typically this is what we see in successful players on this field. To your point on project finance, project preparation, very critical. I don't see any multilateral can work without this. We need the project preparation. Sometimes in project preparation, you do it in grants. Sometimes you do it as part of repayment from the big projects. There's a lot of solution to it. And then how to graduate it to project finance. We have a very strong project finance team, for example, that take it from there and convert it. All the mega projects in the continent, you find your partners going to this. So this is an example of what we do in the oil to reflect on the other bank. And Afreximbank, when they partner with this bank, they can also look at projects together, or they will look at projects separately. We're still predicting a management team will come, board will come, but we're quite confident that there is a big market. There's a lot of experience we can give to them, whether Afreximbank or APPO, and we can't wait until this starts to make the difference in the continent. Thank you.